Welcome back to my dirty dirt bike shop. Front and center is my YZ250 two-stroke. I have not ridden this thing in probably about 2 months since I picked up the YZ125. I've been spending all my time on that, but it's time to get back on the YZ250. But before I start riding her again, I want to freshen her up with the new crankshaft, new piston, and run through the gearbox and make sure there's not any gears in there that show a little bit of wear or whatever that might want to swap them out while I have the motor apart. So far, I picked up the parts that I know I'm going to need. I know I'm going to need a cylinder base gasket, a clutch cover gasket. I'm not worried about the ignition cover gasket. That's pretty reusable for the most part. Some head gaskets just in case some don't come out reusable. YZ250 wrist pin bearing, a YZ250 Pro Light piston. I'm going back to the Pro Light. I was running the Racer Elite, but you know what? I think I like the lighter piston better, but we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. Got some brand new Koyo bearings. These are the same ones that come in it stock. I just bought the actual bearings from the brand Koyo instead of getting them from Yamaha. I got them a little bit cheaper that way. You got some brand new crank seals, so I know I need these parts plus the crankshaft. Now, like I said, once I get in there, I might find other things, maybe a worn clutch basket, or maybe a transmission teeth that are like, you know, the dogs might be wearing out or whatever. But when we get in there, we'll see. We'll look around and replace whatever needs to be replaced. Brand new crankshaft. I kind of set up a little block thing right here so I could just check the true, make sure it wasn't dropped or anything like that, you know, before I received it. So it's pretty makeshift. I just got some old bearings on the crank, and yeah, let's just make sure it's good. Of course, these aren't the finest of tools. Even this dial indicator is kind of a little funny. It seems if I spin it this way, see how it just went to 0, 1, 0, 2, now I spin it that way, it goes 0. So because it's a little chintzy, you know, when you're dealing with stuff this minute, I'm only going to spin it one direction. Let me try to zero it out again. You don't really have to do this, but I'm just curious, and let's try. I'm just gonna let the rod hang the whole time. I'm gonna spin it slowly. We got a 0, 1. Let's see. That's 0.02. 0.02. 0.01. 0.01. That's in metric millimeter, by the way. All right, let's try it one more time. One more rotation. Okay. Testing the other side now. We got a max of 0.03 millimeters. Yeah, so the manual says that that's the standard 0.03 millimeters, and the limit's 0.05. So I'm at standard. I mean, yeah, of course it would be nice to see 0 all the way across, but I'm not going to sit here and start pounding on it and try to get it there. If that's what they say is standard, I guess it's a good crank. Let's put her in. And a quick tip for you guys trying to do that at home: you don't want to be knocking bearings. These bearings are real hard to get on and off this crank. And what I did to get these old bearings on and off with ease is I just used a Dremel here with this little flapping 80 grit. And what I would do is I'd put it in the bearing here and kind of just smoothing it out big enough, just big enough so I can slide it on by hand to do that. I just use some old bearings as donors to do that so I can check the true. Once I get in the motor, anything else I find that has any kind of wear, like transmission parts, clutches, clutch basket, anything and such, I'll go ahead and order that up. But I first have to get the motor out of there and opened up and see what I need to get. So let's go ahead and start ripping this thing apart. But before I do that, it's been 2 months since I fired her up. So let me put a little bit of gas in her, start her up, make sure she runs, and then we'll take her down. Yep, it's definitely been 2 months. Let's fire her up. Woo, she's got compression. I got used to that 125. sure to miss her. Alright, that's the last time this motor is going to run. Let's start taking her out because we have to rebuild it and then she'll run again. I just dropped the motor oil and the coolant, so now let me go ahead and get the seat and the tank off of there. And I guess I'll go ahead and get the pipe off now. And remove these motor mounts right here. And I think I'll remove my fancy cylinder head now. Speaking of cylinder head, this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this crank too. The crank is, technically it's still within limits. I believe last time I measured the left and right play at the upper end of the rod bearing, which we'll measure it again, but was at 1.4. I expected, I put it on about 10 hours, maybe 15 hours in this end. It's probably closer to 1.5 now. Stock, they come right at 1 millimeter. And but I'm going to be making some changes to the head. This head, if you watch any of my videos or if you subscribe to my channel, you'll know I do like to modify my own head to get the squish band clearance set correctly and everything like that. I'm looking at revisiting this after spending some time on the 125 and dialing that thing in. I got it so good and I learned a lot messing with the 125, and I think I think I can come up with better than this one even. And so I'm going to attempt to do that. And but to do that, I like to start with the fresh bottom end, because when you measure the squish band clearance, if you have any type of wear in your lower rod bearing or your crank bearings, it's going to change your squish band clearance. Your squish band clearance will become greater. And since I will be revisiting the head and rechambering it and trying to come up with even a better head, I want to make sure that, you know, it's something I can duplicate over and over again, because the crank in the bottom end was tight and good at the time that I put the head together. So that's what I'm doing here. So we'll get this head off real quick. I'll show you what it looks like. And some other things I have in mind too is also trying out the V-Force 3. I'll be doing a full video review on that versus the stock reed pedals on the YZ250. As well as I want to visit some cylinder porting. Mainly just the exhaust port. These intake ports, just like on the YZ125, are so good. It's easier to mess them up than it is to make them better. But when I did the exhaust port on the YZ125, that was felt. That was a nice improvement. So I'm really interested. I read online that this YZ250 doesn't have a perfectly round exhaust port. It's stuffed, or kind of they kind of slightly detuned the bike by stuffing the exhaust port. I don't know if it's true or not, but I hear it's worth some horsepower. So there's only one way to know, and that's to try. There's a cylinder head. It's the one I did myself. I have this one set with the squish band clearance at about 40 thousandths on the outer edge, and it works its way up to about 50 thousandths right before the dome, just a little bit of taper. And the compression ratio, I basically have it even with the 5UP head. It's the same CCs as the 5UP head, which was the 2003 to 2010 US model. But I'm going to see if I can improve on this even more. I think I can. But that's for a later video. This video, we're just doing the rebuild to get this motor ready for all these changes that I'm going to make to try to find even more power out of this bike. Pop these little O-rings out of here. And this one has, I've been running the Racer Elite piston. It's a 1-ring piston from YZ250. And it has a slightly longer skirt, 1 ring. It's supposed to be stronger. But it is actually a little bit heavier than the Pro Light. It's about the same weight as the stock OEM piston. Alright, let's see what it looks like. And she's got a little bit of carbon on top, but alright. But yeah, I think I felt that. This race piston, the extra weight that it has over the Pro Light, I really feel like I felt that. It didn't wrap out quite as quick to the mid-range. That's at least what I was thinking. I think I'm feeling. I don't know. So yeah, I'm gonna go back to the Pro Light. But just to give you guys a heads up, if you have the 5UP head, you'll have no problem getting your cylinder head off while the motor is on the bike. If you have the 5WM head on the aluminum frame, it likes to hit up in here, and it's really almost. Oh, I actually got this one on and off. Uh-oh, there it is. Well, a lot of times you can't get them off. And if that's the case, because it hits right up here in this little area, if that's the case with your bike, all you have to do is just take this motor mount bolt out right here, the one at the bottom, and just loosen up the swing arm pivot, and let the motor just drop just that little bit in the frame cradle. That'll drop without them two motor mount bolts up front, and then you'll be able to get your head out. Now if your head's been modified like mine, which means you have to mill it to get the squish band clearance right, then you'll have no problem. But, or if you have the 5 UP head from 03 to 2010 on the aluminum frame, then you'll have no problem. But if you got this head, you might have to loosen your motor mounts. And if you have to do that, all you got to do while you got the head off is just shave a little bit right off here up this top corner until you can get the head back on. That way next time you go to do a top end, or you decide to pull your motor out, you don't have to worry about all that nonsense. And you pretty much have to take the head off for the most part to get this bike out of the frame. I mean, you might be able to get it in and out with the head on, but it's probably going to be pretty tough. So you at least have to take the head off. Although I actually like to take the cylinder off too. There's more than one way to skin a cat. I like to act like I'm doing a top end, so to say, and get the cylinder off and have it with just the bottom end, and just pull the bottom end out. It's lighter, and for me, it's just easier. So let me continue on. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen up this clamp for the carburetor right here, and take the bottom subframe pulls out and twist the subframe up, like just rotate it up, pivot up like that to get the carburetor off the cylinder. So when it's time to lift that cylinder up, I'll just loosen this clamp right here. Like I said, just the two bottom subframe bolts, and I'll be able to pivot the subframe and pull that carburetor right off the intake boot there. Alright, I should be able to let me just twist the carburetor a little bit to break it loose off the boot. There we go. Now I'm just going to pop it off the back here a little bit. Alright. She just wants to fall right in there. Let me lift up the subframe. There it is. There, now the carburetor, as you can see, is up off the intake boot. So we'll be able to slide that cylinder right up off there when it's time. Let me go ahead and loosen these radiators up and make some room around this area. I'm also going to remove the ignition coil. That's going to help us when it's time to put the cylinder back on. It kind of gives us a little bit more room to work with. Hey, I appreciate every single one of you guys that are subscribed to my channel and watch these videos. It's been pretty cool. I started out with just a few subscribers. I'm up to like 1,250 or 60 something right now, and it's pretty cool. Alright, got the radiator moved out of the way right here. Let me just go ahead and take this ignition coil off, get that out of the way. That will definitely ease our job when it's time to put the cylinder back in at the end. It's going to be cool. She's going to be nice and fresh. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and remove the power valve cover and get the power valve disconnected. But I'm also going to open up a donation little thing, PayPal donation. I'm just going to call it Race Fuel, and if you can donate some Race Fuel to me, all donations will go towards the videos, from buying more parts to review to just the videos, better video equipment, you name it. Alright, see, yeah, that fits perfect. Look at that. You know, in 06 I used to come with this in a little bag, but you can just use a Phillips screwdriver and put it in there. You want to do that because watch this power valve, see how it moves, and when we go to loosen this bolt up, we don't want to stress anything out in the power valve area. So that's what that's for. You put it in there, it locks it in place and allows you to move the bolt. There we go. Oh man. Alright, found it. Thought I lost it. But we got to get this cylinder off and see how this piston looks. I can't remember how many hours I've put on this piston so far. I don't think it was much. I really didn't like this Racer Elite piston. I really do feel it it definitely, you know, the heavier weight, it kind of rubbed out a little bit smoother. I give it that. Up at the very top it was maybe a little bit smoother, but I didn't like the way it kind of slowed how fast it climbs to the revs, the thrusty part of the mid-range on the bike. It kind of eased up on that. It kind of slowed that up a little bit. So that's why I'm looking to go back to the lighter Pro Light piston. Alright, let's pull the cylinder up. I got all the bolts off. Let's see what we got under there. cylinders out of the way. There's that pretty... By the way, I checked my notes. This piston had 10 hours on it. And she's looking good. Looking really good. Well, let me pop this piston off. And we will check the crank. Let's see what she measures now. I'm just going to use a round punch and just gently give it love taps on the other side and knock the pin on over. I'm not going to kid you. These are really beautiful pistons. I mean, yeah, she's oily right now, but these are really nice pistons. 10 hours on her. I just didn't like the weight. I like a lighter piston. I've come to that conclusion. But if you want to work art or a really strong piston, this is it. Alright, so what we're going to be measuring now is the left and right on this rod. And the manual over here says that the limit should be, they call it the small end free play. It should be, standard is 0.4 millimeters, 1 millimeter. I don't know who has one at 0.4. It's pretty tight. I found the brand new ones at 1 millimeter, but whatever the case is. And the max, the limit is 2 millimeters. I have found when they go past 2 millimeters, the crank doesn't go very far. So if you're getting close to 2 millimeters, you're going to want to get your crank out of there. But there's several ways to measure this. One way is by using a set of calipers. Everyone has these at home. Not everyone has a dial indicator, but pretty much everyone has digital calipers nowadays if you spend any time tinkering in the shop. So what you do is you take the calipers, put them on the big end right here, squeeze it down tight, and zero it out. Boom, there. Alright, then you can widen it up. Let's say I got it at 1.96 now. That's basically almost 2 millimeters. You hold it on one end and you wiggle it, see if it hits. And you just keep tightening it up until when you wiggle it back and forth, it goes clink, 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 and then you loosen up until you only get one clink, and then that's your end play. So this is how you do this with calipers. So now that I've showed you that, let me go ahead and measure it and tell you what I get with these. With calipers, it appears I'm getting about this, 1.37, which is about right, because last time I did a top end, if you watched that video on this bike, I was getting like 1.4. So it appears it hasn't worn any in the past 10 hours, and yeah, I really wouldn't expect it to. But let me go ahead and break out the dial indicator, and let's see what I get with that. See if this is close, at least close enough. Let's see. Alright, I had to get a little bit creative getting this dial indicator on here with this aluminum frame. I have a magnetic mount and aluminum frames, titanium foot pegs. What do you stick it to? I stuck it to the flywheel. So let's get you up in here and we're gonna check it out. Alright, got it zeroed out. It's on the rod. Let's slide the rod towards us and see what we get. 138. Let go of it. 0. 136. 137. So that's it, guys. Once again, proven you can get the job done with a set of calipers. You don't have to have a dial indicator. Plus, it's a lot quicker. I mean, instead of having to set up all that junk. But let me go remove all this and we'll keep moving forward. Not a whole lot left until I can pull this motor out of the frame. Oh, let me loosen that up. There you go. I just loosened it up top. That gave me enough room to pop that out. Slide this cable out of here. Alright, more than one way to skin a cat. Since these cables are right here, the stator cables, I'm just going to disconnect the stator and we'll pull this motor out with the stator still connected. But sometimes if these cables are, the terminals are way behind stuff and hard to get on some of the other models, then I opt to just unbolt the stator and leave it hanging to the side. Since we have to take it off anyway, right? Might as well have it hanging to the side. But yeah, since this one's right here, I'm just going to disconnect it. And then get that front sprocket off of there. Alright. Nothing works like an impact for stuff like this. You don't have an impact that you're tinkering around in the shop, you might want to get yourself one. It doesn't have to be a one that runs on air like mine. You can get a battery powered one nowadays. They're actually pretty good. You know what? I'm gonna have to take the master link off on this chain. I'm gonna have to take that chain off to get that front sprocket out of there. Voila, the chain is off. There we go. Okay, I think all that's left is just the motor mount bolts, and yeah, pretty much. I mean, yeah, I guess I'll take the Kickstarter off. Oh crap, I forgot I gotta get these these frame guards off first. Let me do that. Okay, the frame guards are off. Just if you're curious, this black stuff, I just put some shoe glue. You buy that at Walmart. But I put that on these frame guards because these frame guards have a tendency to try to start rubbing into the aluminum frame and dimpling it up. So that's why I did that. So that's what you see there. But anyway, I went ahead and removed the rear brake here too, so I can get the swing arm pivot bolt out. So I'm going to take these two engine mount bolts out right here, and then we'll get to the swing arm pivot bolt. Alright, loosened up the one down here, and this one, I used the end pack for that. So let me slide these out of there, and then we'll get on that swing arm pivot. I got that off. This motor is a virgin. It's never been out of this cradle. So this will be the first time. Ooh, that's on there good. Yeah, it is. Let me see. You know, my brother told me when I first got this bike, he's like, do yourself a favor and knock that swing arm pivot out and grease it before your bike gets old and it gets stuck. Try air hammer. This is not looking too good, guys. Not looking good at all. Oh boy. It's mashing that. I'm gonna need a new swing arm pivot. I can see it right now. This thing's it's stuck. I should have taken it apart and greased it. Well, let me work at it, see if I can get it out. Alright, I got it coming. It's moving. This is what I'm using. I'm using the vice grips on this so I don't end up hitting my hand. But I'll show you. If yours gets stuck like this, they could be really freaking tough. Got it that far. Obviously, I'm going to need a new swing arm pivot bolt because the end's mashed up. But hey, I'll order one up. Bummer. I should have listened to my brother when the bike was new and fresh. Slid that out, grease it, and put it back in. Well, live and learn. I better do the 125 before it gets too old. She's got about 29 hours on her now. Well, let me finish knocking her out. Now that I have her flush, I'm going to use this long bolt right here. It's a little bit skinnier than the swing arm pivot, and continue knocking her through. Well, she's coming slowly, but I'll keep working at her. Alright, she's coming along. I'm not going to knock her all the way through. I leave her through. I try to get it to right about 1 inch from popping through right here. So it kind of holds the swing arm in place. But you can see how rusty this is. It was just stuck. Yeah, I should have pulled it apart and greased it. Well, you live and learn, I guess. So yeah, I think I can pull the motor out now. Let's try. Let's see if I can get her out of there. Woohoo! There she is. Oh, yeah, you see I have the swing arm pivot still in here, kind of holding swing arm, but you can see the rust that's inside of this hole. That's what happens. It just, the swing arm pivot rusts with the sleeve for the swing arm bearing, and it makes it where they're tough to get out. Almost impossible without damaging the swing arm pivot by pounding it, and that's what happened here. That's a bummer, but that's okay. I'll just buy a new one, and at least I got it out. I've seen it where I couldn't get them out before, and I've had to actually start cutting stuff, and you gotta be real strategic because you don't want to cut the swing arm, so you try to, oh, it just, you don't want to do that, man. Trust me, you don't want to do that. Alright, got the motor out. Now look at this YZ250 piston here. She's fared out really good. A couple little scratches. I wonder if maybe some dirt made it through the air filter at some point. It could happen. But otherwise, she's looking really good. These are really good pistons. But like I said, I'm going with the Pro Light. The cylinder, as you know, this cylinder only has 10 hours on it, so it's a really good shape. But remember I was saying about the exhaust port? You see how it's not perfectly round? The pipe is perfectly round. But this, they call these stuffers. They kind of, it stuffs the port. And what I'm reading online is that this was like something they did to kind of tame down the YZ a little bit, to retain some, you know, some rideability, trackability or whatever. But I'm seeing that a lot of times when people have their cylinders done, that they open this up and make it round, much like the 05 to 07 KX250, the RM250 of that era was. They didn't have this stuff or stuff like this. So I'm interested if I get rid of these and smoothen out and, you know, basically port the exhaust port, what will happen. We're not going to do that on this build right here. I'm going to do that after I put it together and test ride the bike, but I just wanted to point that out. And then the V-Force reeds, I think I'm going to order some V-Force reeds now and get that out of the way. I'll probably put them on for this build, but then what I'll do is after I jet the V-Force reeds in, I already know what the jetting is for these reeds, so after I jet the V-Force reeds in, I'll do a back-to-back comparison and make a video on that. But this is a cylinder. She's in really good shape. Like I said, only 10 hours, so it's really good. The original one, the plating started to peel for whatever reason. And there's the bottom end. And I'm going to go ahead and take a break now and go in the house and finish this up in the morning. Tomorrow morning I will come back out here, open this up, and run through the whole inside and see what else I need to order. I already know I need a swing arm pivot bolt. That's for certain. So I went ahead and added some V-Force reeds to the mix. I'll see what else I need tomorrow morning. And there's what she looks like with no motor in it. So yeah, I'll be able to roll around because I have the swing arm pivot bolt back in. But hey guys, if you haven't already, slide your swing arm pivot bolt out, clean and grease it, and put it back in so you don't have this issue that I just had here, because that's a bummer. I'm definitely going to make sure I get to that on this bike here shortly. Hey, the wife brought me some new shop rags. Well, that's it for part 1 for this build. I will have part 2 tomorrow. If you like this kind of stuff, please click subscribe. I will have these videos that will just keep coming. And I'll catch you guys tomorrow.